The death penalty is one of the most scrutinized forms of punishment in the United States. It is currently legal in 31 states in the United States, and although it's not used that often, it's still one of the most controversial forms of punishment there is. Now, the question is the death penalty justified in the United States? Is it justified depending on the crime? I personally think it is. The death penalty was first put in place in the 18th century BC, actually in a place called Babylon. That's ancient Greece. Now, the death penalty is brought up in a lot of different controversial arguments, and you may ask yourself, why should we care about this topic? And my response to that would be that the death penalty, it's almost like a human being is playing God when it comes to putting someone to death. In the Bible, it says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Therefore, if someone kills someone, should not they be killed in return? And if I had the answer to that question, I would definitely give it to you, but I do not. So I'm going to tell you the reasons why I think that it should. Um, Now you may ask, why would I trust you? What makes you an expert at the death penalty? And I'm here to tell you that I'm not. But I have asked some people who have a lot more experience than I have. My mother, to be one, she's a criminal defense lawyer, and I asked for her opinion on the death penalty, and she kind of said that it's a long spoken treaty that we've always had. We've always used it, and although it's really not used today as much as it was maybe 50 to 100 years ago, it's still put in place for those absurd crimes that people are still committing. And if the death penalty wasn't put in place, people may still commit those crimes and have, I mean, a life in prison. That's one option, but I don't think you really know what goes into making a life in prison. The average cost of a prisoner in the United States Department of Correction costs $31,000 to house. That's $31,000 every single year that a person spends housed in the Department of Corrections. So you could say, why don't we just keep them in there until they die? Instead of putting them to death, it kills two birds with one stone. When really it doesn't. Really, it's the taxpayer who's paying all the money to keep a serious criminal who earned himself or herself the death penalty. But instead, we're almost doing them a favor. I mean, you have to think about the families of the victim, and even the families of the accused. I mean, when it comes down to it, it doesn't make it's not a financial smart decision, nor is it an ethical smart decision, in my opinion. Um, and going back to why you should trust me on this content, I may not have all the answers, but I have done all the research to find all the answers, in my opinion, that will help us get to the bottom of this. And you may feel very strongly about this on one side or the other, but if you would want to adopt my view, I think you're gonna form your own opinion regardless of how I feel about this. My purpose of this is to make you see both sides of the facts. If you ever went to the website, why should the death penalty be allowed? It's a really good website on factual evidence on the crimes that people do, such as treason, death, and rape are all considered to be criminal offenses that you are able to be put to death on. And you may say, what are those? The first two are pretty obvious, but treason is like if you go to another country and you give information that could harm or endanger citizens of another country, such or being a spy, things like that. And now, if you remember, I said that it's not used that often, and it's really not used as much as you would think that something that's perfectly legal would be used. And I think that's more of a 21st century type of ideology, is that we're trying to conserve people's lives and trying to save them more of anything else. In my opinion, I think it should be used more. And I don't mean to sound harsh by that at all. I do think that people deserve, if they're gonna do the crime, they say you might as well, or you better be ready to do the time. And if your time comes that you're put on death row, I don't think we should house prisoners for 50, 60, 70 years and paying $31,000 a year to house, feed, clothe, keep them in the prison. And that may sound like, oh, all I'm thinking about is the money, which I'm not. I'm thinking about the people's families, the lives that prisoner affected. I do not think, in my opinion, that there's any reason that that prisoner should be pardoned with or saved if found guilty. A letter from Americans' View on the Death Penalty says that more and more people each year are becoming more and more in favor of the death penalty. This may be because everyone's heard 2020 is a terrible year and terrible things are happening, and they just want it to stop. And I think the death penalty really puts a fear in people's people or criminals who are going out to commit these heinous acts, such as New York, the state, does not have a death penalty. So like I said in the beginning, 31 states do have a death penalty, the others do not. If I was a criminal and I wanted to commit a serious crime and I didn't want to die for it, I think I'd rather do it in New York than, say, Texas that does have the death penalty. I don't think it should be like that. I think it should be a national law. If anything, even if we never used it, I still think it should be a national law because of the pure fact that a criminal's mindset could be, I'm going to do this crime in a place where they're more lenient on killers, rapists, and people who commit treason than to do it somewhere else, still in the same country. In my opinion, I do think that it should be legal. I'm not saying that we should use it every single day or we should use it on all crimes at all. I hope you understand that. My main goal was to make my point that although the death penalty is highly scrutinized, people are always going to have different opinions. You have to think of it as more of just someone dying, which that's what it is. But it's also used as almost as a scare tactic to prevent future criminals from committing these heinous crimes in fear of the death penalty. Thank you.